Hey, this is Chris, the Environmental Maniac, and way back in the beginning, way down yonder, I talked about all kinds of great things, but the one that I said my heart was on was the One Quadrillion BTU project. Now, you understand that this all started 3 years ago with creating the most technologically advanced backyard structure in the valley, in the desert, outside of Phoenix. I call it an ADOLA, Arid Desert Design Outdoor Living Area. Now, the key to it is understanding that Phoenix gets 40% more radiant energy. Half the sun's energy is radiant. And if you can reflect it before it's absorbed, it just goes away. And Phoenix gets 40% more radiant energy because it's a dry heat. 95% of all greenhouse gas is water vapor. Without the water vapor, with the dry heat, we get 40% more radiant energy. So here's some examples that I put on the website, and you can go check it out yourself. There it is, 180 degrees on the roof, 121 underneath just the double bubble foil. I had an ambient temperature of 106, radiant temperature of 132 that day. That roof is working hard, and that's over just the cupola part. The main part had an R40, 2-inch air gap, 2-inch rigid. It kicked. So then the only thing I had to worry about was cooling off around the outside, and I turned that thing into a big swamp cooler, and you sat on the inside. And that picture, in fact, was still the water cooling days. I used hose pressure, misters. What a mess. And then an incredible man from Fogco came out, and VP of sales came out and talked me into a 250 PSI system. And I tuned it for 105 degrees, 15-mile-an-hour wind, got 85 degrees inside. But at 110, those mists just disappeared, and at 90, everything got wet, so 2 stages. 2 separate parallel lines. There's line A and line B. You can turn on A and B and have a bunch of cooling, turn off A and still have B, or turn off B and still have A, so that you can tune the amount of cooling, multi-stage cooling systems. DesertCooling.com has got some more information on that. And then I couldn't help it. Radiant energy, right? So my patio roof, you can see, that's my backyard. This picture, you can see a little bit of the pool over there. So I painted it white with a reflective roof coating because it blocks the radiant energy. Keeps my patio from turning into a thermal mass, makes it a lot more comfortable. But then a couple years ago, I live in the flight path of Luke Air Force Base and the F-16s. So I painted a 10 by 20 American flag. I'm patriotic, it's going to stay. But that dark blue and dark red increased my patio temperature 20 degrees. Well, let's just say I've got the only one in town. I'm not going to recommend it anywhere else. And then the other one, if you just got to have fun, I've got solar-powered misters and a radiant panel on my pickup truck during the summer. That white panel there reflects 80% of the sun's radiant energy, so my cab remains ambient. And then the misters, hey, they don't do much for cooling off the truck, but they sure are fun. So then after all that research, it kind of was like, well, what happens if I start adding it to my house? And so I storyboarded, because that's what I do. That's the storyboard from the One Quadrillion BTU project, and then I started just a bunch of testing. And I ran more tests. There's more research at onequadrillion.com. A couple thousand pages of research, dozens worth of tests, and I couldn't replicate the results that everyone else was talking about on the internet. And I finally went back to the double bubble foil. There it is. There's 2 layers of foil that reflect radiation, sun's radiant heat, and then there's double bubble in the middle there, which is almost an R15, depends how you use it. And there's my attic before, and there's my attic after, and there's my ceiling during. And that's the problem with retrofit. And what happened is that I reduced my air conditioning by over 30%. I also put window film, reflective window film on the windows, and it was well over 30%. And then you know what that means. My air conditioning is on 30% less, which means there's 30% less air circulation, especially in the morning. And I ended up putting on a thermostat that will circulate air as a primary and cool as a secondary. But it still means that my wife reduced the air conditioning, set the thermometer by 2 degrees less so that she'd be more comfortable. So I had to build some test houses. So what I did is more research on roof sheeting, and there you go, that's OSB, standard oriented strand board, 135 degrees underneath. There you go with a foil OSB, 127, not bad. There you go, double bubble, my friend, 124. Well, then I added that all into 4-foot by 4-foot test houses, and the results were mighty startling. I thought I had it nailed. But up a couple more generations, and here's what ended up happening. It's simple. Sun's radiant energy. If you don't reflect it, it just comes on in. How you reflect it is critical, and some of the tests that are on the internet just don't seem to be able to be duplicated in the Phoenix area where we have so much radiant energy. So here's what I came up with. I'm trademarking this as a dual-plane addict. There's two planes of insulation. See that purple? That's a plane of something like double bubble foil. And then there's the plane of insulation R30 that's on the ceiling. You understand dual pane windows. Okay, dual plane attic. Two planes of insulation, full soffit venting in between the rafters all the way out to full ridge venting so that all of the ambient temperature carries the ambient heat out through the roof, and that means the attic stays ambient. Let me tell you, in the desert out here, our attics can get up to 160 degrees and more. If we can hold it at ambient, that's a huge difference. And this simple, man, it took a long time to get here. Simple idea is going to reduce air conditioning by 20 to 40%. Drop to 30 some odd percent here. This is better. That's going to yield, make it an option on new houses. Somebody talking to somebody is going to know somebody that's at the top end of the food chain for a major builder. I got to talk to somebody that's at the top end, because trust me, I need to talk to a leader, not a manager. If you listen to the other sections, you understand. And then I need to test this in a cold climate, change a few of the variables, but I think the dual plane addict is going to make sense in cold climates, but we got some testing to do. What's going to happen is, by helping homeowners do what I did, reduce their air conditioning by 20 to 40%, the country saves a quadrillion BTUs of energy a year, equivalent to 17 million barrels. Please understand, I'm saving 8 million BTUs a year. I don't have to do that very many times before I'm up to a quadrillion, and if we can expand it more, that's even better, and if we can get it into the winter climates, that's even better. This is exciting for me. So what I want to summarize with, what I want to end with is, hey, I did it with recycling 13, 15 years ago. I was so far ahead people didn't even understand. Down there in the introduction, I showed you the car I built in 1972 that met 1986 air pollution requirements. What I know is that if people think outside the box, there are so many solutions to the problems that you just have to be excited. And we've got to keep the momentum going. Just because global warming was based on weak science doesn't mean that the entire movement is going to fall apart. And man, I don't want to drop the environmental ball. We did that in the 70s because of bad science. Let's not do it again this time. Let's instead start thinking of return on investment for environmental products and make a difference. Let's all have some fun. Let's all get excited. Let's all get it done.